Public service announcement. Subscribe to the Regretful Penguin. 1994. Nelson Mandela is the first black president of South Africa. Moldova decides to remain independent from Romania through a referendum, whereas some TV tycoon decides it's time to join politics and wins the parliament elections in Italy. On a lighter note, Lillehammer hosts the 17th Winter Olympics, Tarantino's Pulp Fiction premieres in theaters, and Sony releases the iconic PlayStation just on time for Christmas. But in 1994, one man made a decision that changed his life forever, and actually our lives as well. He left his job as vice president of an investment company in New York and moved across the US to Seattle to dedicate time to his new target. He was afraid he'd missed the opportunity of taking advantage of the ever-growing internet, so on July 5th, 1994, he decided to found his startup and call it Cadabra. Too bad, his lawyer thought that the name Cadabra could be understood as cadaver, so our man took a dictionary and picked something that would represent the greatness of his project and a word that started with A, so it could be on top of an alphabetized list. He chose the name Amazon, and the rest is history. What you may not know is that the first idea of Jeff Bezos for Amazon was one of a bookstore. He picked an item according to demand, volume, availability, and low price. Amazon even got sued by Barnes & Noble for claiming to be the world's largest bookstore. Speaking of books, in 2004, Jeff went to his employees and told them to work on an electronic reader before Apple and Google could even think about such a thing. 3 years later, in 2007, the first Kindle was launched for the reasonable price of $400. This model had a tiny keyboard and was also quite bulky compared to the newer Kindles. Parallel to this was the launch of the Kindle Store, which allowed customers to get their hands on books for a very affordable price. Classics are also as cheap as 50 cents. Look at this. Fast forward to 2014, there was a frenzy for subscriptions. Netflix was reaching the top of the world and expanding furtherly to other European countries and India. Prime Video was also expanding to Europe, so I guess Amazon thought, okay, we're offering subscriptions for video content, but we have this beautiful e-reader here, so why don't we offer the same thing but for ebooks? And there we got Kindle Unlimited. For the cheap price of less than 12 euros or $12 a month. Okay, that's not cheap, but if you're like me that you can't enter a bookstore without leaving some of your money there, you get that 12 euros a month is not that much. Anyway, for less than 12 euros a month, you get access to a catalog of 4 million books. 4 million books. Even if you're a fast reader and read like 2 books per week, the amount of time you'd need to read the entire catalog is 38,500 years, and that's a lot. Now, a question is hanging in the air. Can you read any book on Kindle Unlimited? The answer is no. Even if the catalog contains that huge amount of items, many of them are obscure at best. Of course, you'll find some classics like works by Jane Austen, William Shakespeare, the Bronte sisters, and you can find them both in original and in translation. Then you can find the whole Harry Potter heptalogy, many Colleen Hoover books, I guess we could live without them, at least I could live without them, H.D. Carlton, Lucy Score, Rebecca Ross, Frida McFadden, Anna Wong. I mean, these authors are famous regardless of whether their novels are good or bad, so yeah. But then there is this plethora of less popular books, and most of them seem to be dark romance. And that's where, my friend, we enter the world of dark mafia romance, a fantastic romance subgenre which the world, or at least I, could gladly do without, more than Colleen Hoover books. Yeah, But what's mafia romance? It's a subgenre of romance, usually of the dark kind, in which one of the parts, or both, I don't know, is a member of a group of organized criminality or works with them. You can recognize these books because they usually have a muscular, tanned man, a gym rat, so to speak, covered in tattoos and conventionally attractive on the cover. They also tend to have a hipster haircut. Clearly, they don't have any idea of what a mafia boss looks like because the reality hits differently. I'm not sure I can post the photos of these individuals, so I'll just give you some names here on the video and you can Google them to see what they look like. Anyway, here on Kindle Unlimited we find works of art like Surprise Quadruplets for the Mob, Filthy Bratva, Her Filthy Bratva Bodyguard, Taken by the Filthy Bratva, Grumpy Bratva Hitman, and many Bratva titles. I asked myself why readers want to dive into such stories, and I think the answer lies in the morbid charm that dark themes tend to have. I said this many times, I love watching true crime shows, especially about violent crimes and frauds. For me, it's about the psyche and reasons that lead people to commit such atrocities and hearing the side of the victims. But I guess it must be something different for dark romances, more on the side of imagining doing something that is forbidden or frowned upon. The adrenaline of pushing the boundaries, both in a legal and in an actual sense, as these novels are usually, well, very detailed. I'm not attracted to such stories because the deeds of mafia clans are part of the history of my country, so I don't really find anything romantic in it. But I guess works like The Godfather created another image of what a boss looks like and acts like, his devotion to protect his family, so I understand why it might be attractive. The mafia romance I picked for today's review is Her Russian Daddy by Bianca Cole, independently published in 2020. We love an author who does that for herself. It's part of a series of 4 books and it's the second in line. Now, I don't know how much these books have to do with one another except for the existence of the same character in the same universe, but anyway, the other novels are Her Irish Daddy, Her Italian Daddy, and Her Cartel Daddy. I have to inform you, there's not much to review here, but before I dive into it I have to make a sort of synonym key because this book is very explicit and full of actual scenes, so I will use terms like corn, fun times, rooster, kitty cat, and backdoor, and I think that's everything I need to specify. Also, these videos are a reflection of my own opinions as usual, so take it with a grain of salt. Her Russian Daddy is corn on paper, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, it's just what it is. The plot, if we can call it plot, is only a side dish to the fun times the two protagonists spend together. The love story is, I don't know, so shallow that it is reduced to the act itself. There's an attempt to give background to the two and to their love, but it doesn't go anywhere and is just left to rot. Don't get me wrong, I'm not angry or anything, I didn't have many expectations to begin with, and to be fair, I read the novel just for the lols. If you go into the story with this mindset, then it becomes almost funny. The plot is rather simple. Two people having business with two different mafia factions get together, one of the mobsters finds out about the relationship and gets angry, the girl gets kidnapped and the guy rescues her. The end. That's it, actually. The chapters alternate the point of view of the male protagonist, Yuri, to the point of view of the female counterpart, Ava. Yuri is a cold-blooded hitman freelancing for the Russian Bratva in New York. There's a reason why he is so cold-blooded. He says it's because of his upbringing with a violent father, but the truth is that his blood all goes to his rooster because this poor guy can go a minute without saying that he's so hard it hurts. Man, it's time to check in with your andrologist if you have blue balls 24/7. Ava is the best private investigator in New York and works for anybody who pays her well enough, and it's almost mostly criminals. Eva was initially in police school, but she was later kicked out for reasons that the book doesn't really tell us. They only tell us that it wasn't her fault, but more than that, we won't experience That's it. So Mr. Blue Balls, I've decided I'll just call him that, executes an Italian mobster in broad daylight without leaving any witness behind. Not because he took care of them as well, but because apparently there is none. The person was Alessandro Rossi, and listen, I'm not sure you get how generic this name sounds, really. Like, Rossi is the most common Italian surname in Italy. It's basically a placeholder name. It sounds like John Doe or something. Anyway, Eva is asked by the Italian boss Enzo D'Angelo to investigate the death of his capo, whatever that means, because capo means boss, so well, I mean, it doesn't matter, let's move on. Here we learn about the exquisite qualities of Eva as a private investigator. She asks a mobster if he had problems with anybody that might have led to Rossi's execution. Well, Eva, I don't know if you noticed, but it's a mobster you're talking to, so, well, yeah, it's likely he has problems with other clans. Also, Enzo tells her she can get info from said Mario Campini, who is apparently missing in action, but Eva can find him in like 2 seconds by going to his family restaurant. I mean, Enzo, if you don't know where your men are and they turn out to be in the same neighborhood, you might have a problem managing your resources, my dear. Back to Mr. Blue Balls. He went to the Russian mobster Andrei Petrov to report on the execution, and then we have a blah 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 on the background of the protagonist. It was just so boring. His violent dad told him that he should do what he's good at and make it his job, so he joined the Spetsnaz. I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, the Russian Special Forces. Because the thing he was good at, according to him, is executing people. He got thrown out from the Special Forces because of an injury, so he claims he needed to work as a hitman because, yes, I can think of other professions he could have pursued. I don't know, Russian freelance teaching, crime scene cleaner, weapon dealer, checkout assistant, but no, hitman sounds about right. Andrea informs Mr. Blue Balls that Enzo D'Angelo hired Eva to investigate Alessandro's case, and wow, we find out that Mr. Blue Balls had been following Eva for 2 whole years before that moment, and that they both are members of a BDSM club called Sapphire, which Blue Balls joined also to get closer. Friendly reminder that stalking is a criminal offense in most countries and that it causes distress and trauma in the victim. Mr. Blue Balls is torn as he says, quote, "My head tells me to steer clear of her. At least for a few weeks. My heart and my rooster have other ideas," end quote. Back to Eva, she goes to the crime scene and magically gets her friend in the police to allow her to enter the crime scene, which I get that it's a work of fiction, but geez, I mean, a private investigator works for the interest of another individual, so there is the risk of contaminating the scene, I guess. I don't know if it's that easy to access. Then she goes to Campino's pizzeria and finds out that Alessandro was trying to broaden his dealing area, so that's why the Russians took him out. At this point, she decided to get info from a Russian guy called Rykov, who knows that this ghost, that's the nickname given to Mr. Blue Balls because he carries out executions, but he manages to leave no trace behind, is a regular of the Sapphire Club, and he can find him there every Friday, so Eva's plan is to get there and ask the bartender if she can point out any regular. Let me clarify something here. Eva and Mr. Blue Balls are members of this BDSM club. More specifically, they enjoy the dom sub kind of BDSM. Of course, our Mr. Blue Balls is the dominator, while Eva is the submissive. She specifies that she's normally very independent and resolute, but in intimacy she wants to be taken care of and let go of control. One merit of the book is the emphasis on consent in BDSM relationships. In these dark romances, consent is often missing, and that's why I don't really enjoy reading them, among other things, aside from the poor writing. Her Russian Daddy is surely poorly written, but at least it takes consensual fun times seriously. Then he trips over other things, but we'll see that later. But anyway, Mr. Blueballs joined the club under the false and super credible name of Josh King. Yes, because his thick Russian accent won't give him away at all. The two finally talk to each other in the club, but not before Eva rejects possible doms and gets the help of the bartender to locate Mr. Blueballs, and not before the nth reminder that Mr. Blueballs' intimate parts are aching. Quote, "I groan as my pants get tight and my rooster strains to break free. What I will give to be inside that woman." End quote. Yuri, my dear, it must be amazing to be you. Anyway, they find out that they're into the same kind of role-playing, that is to say, Eva likes to be protected and call her dumb daddy. Hence the title of the book, and believe me, the word daddy will be said quite often, while Mr. Blueballs likes to take control and protect his sub. The day after, they have dinner together and discuss what they like and what boundaries have to be, and the following chapters are just scenes of the fun times. There's not much to say except that the scenes are very explicit, I already said that, compared to other spicy books that I've read. By the way, Mr. Blueballs likes to talk of himself as this hard, in every sense, cold-blooded man, but every time Eva threatens to quit the relationship, or leaves, or ignores him, he sounds like a whiny kid who didn't get his favorite cereals for breakfast. He's so obsessed over a person he doesn't know anything about that he also puts any of his work in jeopardy. Basically, all the things he said about his past forging his emotionless soul are erased by Eva, which I get it's an attempt to give him a bit more depth, but honestly, not a good one. Let's move on. Mr. Blueballs decides to crash Eva's pizza night with her friend at her apartment. Eva is sad because she unwillingly gave out the identity of Yuri to Enzo, so she needs a girls' night to recover. This is the moment where Mr. Blueballs becomes the caricature of himself, because yeah, okay. So we know that he doesn't like to take orders, so that's why he does freelancing and why he's a dom in the BDSM scene. At one point, the pizzas are delivered to Eva's door and Mr. Blueballs pays for them. So Eva's friend says to bring them to the kitchen, and we read this scene in which Mr. Blueballs is silently pissed because Eva's friend dared to say bring them to the kitchen. Oh wow, we have a badass here who doesn't take any kind of order. No, seriously, this character is a living flatline. That can be possible. But Eva is not better. When her friend and Mr. Blueballs leave, she is so horny that she forgets to close the door to jump on the bed and give her kitty cat some fun times. Mr. Blueballs turns around and enters the open apartment and finds her, and she starts screaming, "F me, daddy." So yeah, another actual scene which is exactly like the previous one, except that this time Mr. Blueballs hints at the fact that he wants to tease her back door. After the fun times, in another poor attempt to give depth. Jesus, English is difficult. English is difficult. In a poor attempt to give depth and background to the characters, Eva tells about her abusive uncle who used to beat her. No hint at other kind of abuse. It doesn't make it any better, but yeah. And Mr. Blueballs brings her to see Dawn and other cheesy things I honestly do not remember. At some point, the two get busted before a bath or something, so Enzo's men crash into the apartment and kidnap Eva, who is completely naked at this moment. Please keep this apparently irrelevant detail in mind. Mr. Blueballs also gets in another car with Enzo's men, but he manages to get rid of them and go to Andres, where he pledges allegiance to the Bratva because in case of emergency during Eva's rescue, they would have his back. Mr. Blueballs goes on saying that he's in love with Eva, but honestly, when, where, and why was this love born? Because aside from lust and fun times, there wasn't really any deep conversation between the two. We don't know what they have in common aside from the mob and the BDSM thing. We don't know what he likes about her and what she likes about him. Is this role-playing transforming into love, because I don't find it reasonable. I don't buy it. In my opinion, love comprises many different things, and reducing it to the actual act and few things that in the end are also tied to these fun times, I don't know. Let's move on and be done with this. Mr. Blueballs rescues Eva, who is in a serious state. They manage to get out of Enzo's villa and go to Andrei's house, where Mr. Blueballs is initiated to the Bratva as enforcer. Then he meets Eva in a room and they discuss things like the fact that he has stalked her for 2 years straight. Eva attempts to say that stalking is not nice, and he replies, quote, "I want to apologize for loving you before we met, Eva," end quote. And Eva tells him that she loves him too. Listen, you cannot dedicate 2 paragraphs at the beginning of the book to the importance of consent and then fuck it up like this by normalizing stalking. Stalking is not love, okay? It's not cute, it's not romantic. Engrave it in your brains, please, and stop romanticizing these red flag behaviors. Anyway, another fun time scene follows. From being naked, Eva is magically clothed with black lace lingerie, which I wonder where it came from, since they went directly from Enzo's to Andrei's. So unless these guys have a stash of Victoria's Secret in their mansions, I find that unlikely that she has lingerie on. Mr. Blueballs gets access to Eva's backdoor and she discovers that she likes it. Good for her, I guess. This scene is made even more unlikely by the fact that they are both severely wounded, because Eva was tortured by Enzo and Andrei was like, during the Bratva initiation, every member of the Bratva had to like use a knife to create wounds in his back or something, so yeah, it's unlikely. I guess they still have the mind to have fun times and that their priorities are different. And that's that. I mean, the whole beef with Enzo D'Angelo dies like that. His name will never be mentioned again in this book, unless they talk about this war in Her Italian Daddy, because as far as I know, Her Italian Daddy has Enzo D'Angelo as protagonist. But yeah, it was left in the air like this. The story ends with a fast forward in which they live together in a nice apartment. Eva tells Mr. Blueballs that she's pregnant, and he has a moment in which he doubts he's ready to be a father, and Eva is like, quote, "What's in your mind?" End quote. Well, Eva, I don't know, maybe the fact that he's associated with a mob and bringing a kid into the world would put the existence of said kid into jeopardy. I don't know, it's just the thing off of the top of my mind. But I guess mobsters don't really consider that as a problem, so... The book ends with yet another scene in which my rooster in our kitty cat and whatnot, and that's where we finally reach the end of this. So, I think the thing that bothered me the most is the fact that there's this attempt at justifying the behavior of these 2 idiots, and I don't mean the BDSM thing, I don't care about that, I mean the rest of it, by inserting random information about their past here and there, but at the same time these bits don't really go anywhere, so... But then again, if I called it corn on paper, it's not because of the explicitness of the actual scenes, well, also because of that, but more because the rest of the plot is functional to bring the reader to those scenes. Exactly like in Corn, whatever the media is, the plot is not really what matters, and that's why it results shallow most of the times. So yeah, that's my opinion on Russian Daddy, a dark mafia romance that didn't leave me much aside from some laughs here and there. Please leave a like and a comment if you liked the video, and be sure to subscribe for more content, otherwise you will have Mr. Blueballs chasing you in your dreams with a thick and hard rooster in his pants. Sorry. As usual, thank you so much for your time spent with me today. Be safe and take care of yourself. Ciao!